as a Detroit judge is now facing a lawsuit by the family of a teenager whom he ordered handcuffed during a field trip. The family says the 15-year-old girl was left feeling humiliated and embarrassed, and that family has now filed a federal civil lawsuit. 15-year-old Eva Goodman visited the 36th District Court on a field trip, and you could actually see some of this courtroom video right there of this incident. She was in the courtroom, she fell asleep, and that caused the judge to be upset. Now, when she fell asleep again, Judge Kenneth King ordered her into handcuffs and a prisoner's outfit. And the scene was visible on the court's stream online, and we are showing you portions of that. That's the 15-year-old girl in the handcuffs right there. Now, the girl's mother says she and her two children do not have permanent housing at the moment, and that is why her daughter was tired. King has now been temporarily removed from his docket and lost his teaching position at Wayne State University. To talk more about this, I do want to bring in James White, who is an attorney in Michigan. James, thank you for taking the time to speak with us. We appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Absolutely. So I did want to talk to you about this, very latest event. I think that a lot of folks, if they're hearing this for the first time, it's quite shocking. Can a judge legally do something like that?
So like some of your viewers, I was in Chicago for the convention for a couple of days. So this news, I caught the back end of it. So legal is a question that is determined by judges. In this case, he's going to be judged by his peers. In Michigan and most states, we have administrative bodies who are almost certainly always lawyers or judges who police these sorts of actions. In Michigan, there's one for lawyers and there's one for judges. For judges, it's called the Judicial Tenure Commission. He has a lot of answering to do with this group. This behavior, and I want to be careful about this because I don't want the lawyer police coming after me. One of the rules is you don't despise your opponents publicly and say things that are inappropriate. We're officers of the court. And the situation almost always, this is the first time I've ever heard of it from a participant in a courtroom, let alone a 15-year-old who is there in what seems to be a quasi-homeless condition, sleeping. So 10 years ago, just to give you an example, 10 years ago, cell phones were the big thing. And judges had their right to remove cell phones from people, and they'd usually give them back after the hearing was over, but falling asleep in a courtroom, I could list a litany of cases where judges nodded off and lawyers nodded off. And I think the most important thing to take from this is this was a non-participant. The days of duct tape over people's mouths are over. I'm a common contributor to Court TV, and I think that the case, I can't remember the name of it, it doesn't matter, but 6 months ago, a gentleman was accused of murder and he was out of control. And the judges removed him from the courtroom and gave him his own room with a Zoom TV cam so he could participate as appropriate. But, the idea that this young woman was placed in cuffs and shackled and removed in front of her friends and family. And I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, I'm still trying to get my head wrapped around what happened here, but I believe this field trip was for young people that wanted to practice the law, so, this is despicable to me, and I suspect I'll get a letter from his people, sending me to the lawyer police for saying that. But I truly believe that. There's really the only consequence that makes the most sense for him to be removed from the bench, either a voluntary resignation, which I suspect the Judicial Tenure Commission will make that part of the formula of potential solutions, or something more severe, such as the governor, particularly Governor Whitmer getting involved. Judges, and if I could just finish this thought, judges are umpires, right? They call balls, they call strikes. I've been practicing long enough now that all the judges I participate with, I participated in most of their campaigns. It's an electrical process unless you get into a federal setting. And once they become a judge, it doesn't matter who gave them. It's not supposed to matter who gave them money. It's not supposed to matter who the TV camera is or who you're trying to show out for. They're umpires, balls and strikes. And I would equivocate it to a baseball game. If there's a bar fight in the crowd, which unfortunately happens quite often, the umpires aren't involved in that. These are spectators. There's people, there's bailiffs, there's police officers, there's other individuals that are supposed to be doing that. So this judge, and let me just real quick cap the lawsuit. So he's being sued under the 1983 statute for violation of people's civil rights under federal circumstances, and not always federal, but federal circumstances. And as a general matter, the general rule is judges, police officers, prosecutors, and members of the law enforcement community are immune from the action they take as long as it's relatively in good faith. And I think the lawyers are going to get around that immunity on this one. And I think the Judicial Tenure Commission has quite a lot of work to do with this judge. And I'll be surprised to see him wear a robe again.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you that because right now he has been removed from the bench, but he hasn't yet been stripped of being a judge. What are the next steps? You mentioned that there is that process that he's going to be reviewed. He could possibly voluntarily relinquish and step down from the bench. What are those different options, and what does that process look like? How long might that take?
So I'll try to keep it brief, and if you have additional questions, I'm happy to answer them. But, the idea is generally we see people go through this process for behaviors associated with alcohol or drug abuse, or maybe some other poor judgments that can be remedied. And so there is sort of a first rung of how do we fix this? And does the public need to know about it? Well, we're beyond the public knowing about this one. So, that possibility for him, not to say rehabilitation is not an option. The idea that he's going to have some non-public admonishment, or worse, admonishment is just a fancy word for saying, don't do this again, up until a disbar, which I don't know if this rises to that occasion. But I think the next step we're going to see is there's going to be an inquiry from the Judicial Tenure Commission. And as lawyers, it doesn't even matter if this young woman and her mom or other spectators file it. As attorneys, we are required, when we see this sort of behavior, to send in a request for an investigation. And I'm going to tell you what, you don't like seeing those letters come in the mail because it's not a rubber stamp. These are very, very experienced investigators, and they take it very, very seriously. Judges being objective and just behaving with common sense is essential to our system. And we see this happening. I'm not going to get political, but we see this happening all over the country right now, on a federal level, on a state level, where judges, are being judged on who appointed them and so on. And that is not how our system is supposed to work. So I could tell you, having worked in Michigan for more than 25 years, they're going to take this one seriously. And I don't think this judge is ever going to wear a robe again.
And it's interesting because, along that same lines, when he was initially just speaking following the incident, he was saying that this was his version of just laying down the law, wasn't remorseful at all, and seemed to be doubling down on his actions, saying that he was really doing it to help. It will be interesting to see what that outcome of the process is like. James, as always, we do appreciate you taking the time to join us here on Live Now from Fox.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely.